Okay, we're on page 411 talking about array initialization. I just ran a little loop there to make sure it worked. On page 412, there's a whole discussion about an alternate way, an alternate notation for creating an arrays. Don't do that. I want you to learn the techniques which are more portable, the ones that work for practically any computer language. And so doing it this way is going to work for, all the rest of the computer languages that we offer at the university. So let's just stick with the way they have it here in the book and ignore that whole section on page 412 completely. Okay, on page 413 they talk about processing array elements. Well, there's nothing really special here. I mean, each one of those elements basically is an integer. Anything you could put an integer there, right? Any place where you could put an integer, you could put an element in an integer array. We've kind of already did that, right? I mean, it can go on the left-hand side of an assignment operator, and go on the right-hand side of an assignment operator. It doesn't really matter, right? It's just a variable of type int. Not that big a deal. Now, the only thing that's kind of weird is when you talk about doing math. And so let me give you an example of what I mean. And this is not actually very complicated. It's just something you need to see at least once. So what if I said scores sub 3 this time, and then I went, plus plus, okay? That's going to take the value of the fourth position, remember, and increment it by 1. But that is not at all the same as well, that yeah, it doesn't like a constant. Hey, give me a minute. Yeah. Junk is equal to 3. Okay, then we're going to do here, and we say junk. Got to make my example work. Okay. So on line 45, I'm actually assigning value to the fourth position, right? Okay. But in line 46, I'm actually doing the math on the index, which is not the same thing, right? This is doing math on the element, and this is doing math on the index, just like here. I mean, this index thing is changing constantly, right? Okay, good. That kind of sort of makes sense. So just be careful. If you intended to have doing math on the index, that's fine. If you intended to do math on the element, that's fine. Just remember that they're slightly different. Okay. So array length. Sometimes you just don't know in advance how long the array is. For example, up here, I counted and there was 4 of them, right? Well, what if I didn't know that for a fact? Somebody just gave me an array and didn't tell me how big it was. And so, how do I do a for loop when I don't know how long the thing is? Well, there's a really cool thing you can do where you can ask the top. Remember, this is a class. Okay, so out.println, and then I'm going to say, I think it's hip, right? Hip dot. Okay, the first one that pops up is the length. Okay, now this is a field variable. This is a public field variable. Remember the entire discussion we had just last time about how it was a really bad idea to have public field variables because you could mess up with input validation. There's no way you remember all that stuff, right? Well, look closely up at the top here. It says public final int length. Ooh. Which means this is a read-only field variables. So what is the possibility of having an input validation error on a read-only field variable? 0 possibility. So this is acceptable. Anyway, it's just a field variable, public field variable. So if I said length, it's going to tell me how long this guy is. That kind of makes sense? All right. So I'm going to grab this guy. We're going to do this. And so I'm going to do this example over again where we did this one. All right, I'm going to grab this guy. Except instead of hard coding this thing as a 4, I'm going to now say hip hip hooray. Oh no, like this, okay? Because that way I don't have to know in advance how big the thing is. I'll just ask the system, hey Mr. System, how big is that array? And it's going to come back and tell me. That works out pretty doggone cool. Let's just run this, make sure it didn't make any errors. And yay, there's 4 of them, and there they are. Hooray! Okay, cool. So now remember, now this field is a read-only field. They don't follow my convention of a private field variable. First of all, it's not private, but it is a field variable, and nobody follows this. No textbook I know ever used, PFV the way I do. Okay, so a field variable is not a method, right? So I don't need bow legs at the end. It's just a plain old variable like any other variable. Okay, cool. Cool. So on page 416, they talk about a new type of loop. Now, you thought, wait a minute, I thought we finished loops. We were back in chapter or whatever it was, 4 or 5. Kinda. This is the last one. This thing is called an enhanced for loop on page 416. Now, almost all of the other programming languages, and again, I try to make things as portable as possible. So when you learn one language, it'll always make sense in all the rest of the languages. So all the rest of the languages call this a for each loop. Just saying. Okay. So it's just a different name. The concept is the same. So here's an example of what it's supposed to look like. I go in here and I say for some data type, like in this case it'd be int, some variable, probably something, I don't know, like score, singular, and then a colon and the name of the array. All right, so I'm not actually using an index. All right, you follow me here? All right, here it goes. So let's go do this one over a second time. Except this time I'm going to say for int, how about score? I'm going to go back to that one. Singular score, colon, scores. Okay, like that. Now, this will allow me to iterate, that's a cool term, iterate over all of the items in the thing. So let's just make sure it works. Hey, since this is getting kind of, I'm going to do print without an ln on the end, just because all this listing's going vertical and it's difficult to see. And there's only 10 of them, so it won't be complicated. So I'm just going to use plain old print, and I'm going to say score plus a space so you can actually see them all. In fact, I'll probably go back and do that in all the rest of these guys too. Well, what the heck? While I'm here, I shouldn't be wasting your time doing this. But, whoops. I need this guy. Okay. So, let me just run this. Okay, ta-da! So there's 4 of these guys, and here's the rest of these guys. Cool. All right, so this is a really cool technique for being able to iterate over an array. Okay, now, what we haven't talked about is, okay, you're thinking to yourself, okay, whatever, why would I want to use this? Well, there's some significant performance gains. I mean, really significant. Like several hundred times. This is several hundred times faster than the equivalent one we did up here. This one. Several hundred times. Okay? So, yes, this makes it a heck of a lot faster. If all you're trying to do is just get through the list as fast as humanly possible, you're going to use this enhanced for loop. Okay. So you might ask, well, why is it faster? Well, what happens is the machine is going to cache up the values. And when you ask for like number 4, while you're asking for number 4, it kind of sort of knows you're going to ask for number 5 next. So behind the scenes, it goes and grabs number 5, anticipating that you're going to ask for it. And so then it comes back and says, hey, give me number 5. It's behind the scenes, it's going to go grab number 6. Okay? So because it caches up the values, they go quickly. All right, so unfortunately, even though this is super fast, there are some very significant limitations on what you can and can't do. Okay? So let's look at the rules. Hey, you got your paper and pencil, Randy? Okay. So what are the rules for using an enhanced for? First of all, it's read-only. You're not allowed to make any changes to the array. Okay? I mean, there's no such, in here, right? I could just go in here and just say, oh, okay, well, fine. Let's change a value. So this is read-only. That's a significant disadvantage. You must iterate the list forward. In other words, you can't go backwards, right? With a traditional for loop, I could say start at 9 and go to 0, right? I can go backwards, right? And in a traditional for loop, I could say I want to count by 2s. So I want 0 and 2 and 4 and 6 and 8, right? Things like that. Well, these guys are read only, forward only, and iterate by 1 only. Okay? So those are 3 major things. Read only, you can't make any changes. Forward only, it has to start at the beginning, it has to go to the end, and only in one direction. And then it has to hit them all, as you can't skip around. Okay? And then you can't access the array index because there is no index. Score is not an index. It is the actual values. Okay? That kind of makes sense? All right. So once again, this thing is a lot faster for doing some things. If all you're trying to do is zip through this thing as fast as humanly possible, that's pretty cool. If you're trying to do something, well, okay. Maybe you'll need to be able to use a traditional for loop. Okay, on page 417, they talk about letting the user specify an array size. Okay. So just ask them. Whatever, dude. We could do one of those input validation examples, but I'm not. So I'm going to say, int, I don't know, something, wombat. Is it? Oh, hang on. Doggone it. I need a scanner. And of course, I'm going to get a thing here saying, hey, you forgot to do the import. Okay, fine. So now I'm going to go here and say whatever. I'm going to say int wombat is equal to integer parse int keyboard next line. Okay, we've done this a gazillion times. And now that we got this, and now we create our array of kumquats. This is not complicated. So let's just say these wombats have names. So I'm going to do string wombats, plural this time. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Is equal to no string wombat. Actually, to make this make more sense, maybe I should have said num wombats or something. The number of wombats. That would have made a lot more sense. Okay, so this whole section in the book is like, yeah, isn't that kind of obvious? Yeah, you ask them for the size. You get the size from them and you put it in the constructor of the string array and we're done. Like, I'm kind of confused on why they had an entire section of the book talking about this. It seems incredibly obvious to me. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. You know how this works.